You think traveling alone gives you freedom, but it also gives something else the chance to follow you. I learned that the hard way one summer, during the Hungry Ghost Month. If you've never heard of it, it's the time of year when the gates of the underworld are said to open, and the dead are free to roam among the living. People burn joss paper, avoid traveling at night, and never, ever whistle after dark. I thought those were just old superstitions. But what happened to me made me wish I'd listened. Because once the ghosts find you traveling alone, they don't let you go easily. It was August, a humid blanket of air wrapped around me as I boarded the overnight bus from Kuala Lumpur to Ipoh. I'd been meaning to visit my friend May there, a quiet escape after months of burnout. The trip was supposed to take just 4 hours, but the station was unusually empty that night. Even the staff seemed reluctant to make eye contact. When I asked about it, the ticket clerk muttered something about the 7th lunar month and told me not to sit in the last few rows of the bus. He didn't explain why. He didn't have to. I brushed it off, of course. I was tired, my backpack heavy, my mind set on sleeping through the ride. As the bus pulled out of the terminal, the city lights melted into the darkness of the highway. Only 6 of us were on board, scattered like forgotten souls across 20 rows of seats. The driver was an older man, thin and wiry, with a red string tied around his wrist, something my grandmother used to wear to keep spirits away. He drove without a word, the hum of the engine steady, hypnotic. I leaned my head against the window and closed my eyes, feeling the gentle vibration of the road beneath me. But the air in the bus felt strange. Thick. Like it carried more than just humidity. Around an hour into the trip, I woke up cold. The air conditioner was off, yet I could see my breath fogging faintly in front of me. My watch read 2:47 a.m., the dead hour. I rubbed my arms, shivering, and that's when I noticed it. There was someone sitting 2 rows behind me. I hadn't seen anyone there earlier. They were too still, their head tilted slightly to the side, like they were watching the back of my seat. I tried to convince myself it was another passenger I'd missed before falling asleep, but something about the stillness, it wasn't right. I turned around quickly, pretending to stretch, and saw the shape clearly this time. Long black hair spilling forward, a pale hand resting on the seat back. She was wearing what looked like an old-fashioned cheongsam, the fabric dull and faded. I opened my mouth to say something, but the words caught in my throat. Her head turned, slowly, mechanically, until I saw her face reflected faintly in the window. Her eyes were open, but there was nothing behind them. Just a hollow, glassy stare that met mine through the reflection. I froze. The driver's voice broke the silence. He called out, asking if everything was all right. I almost said no, but the moment I blinked, she was gone. The seat behind me was empty again. I laughed it off, forcing my voice to sound steady as I said I was fine. But the driver's eyes met mine through the mirror. He didn't look convinced. He just muttered under his breath, something like, "Don't look back again." I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I felt that cold air move behind me, brushing the back of my neck. The sound of faint breathing grew louder, closer, almost in rhythm with my own. Then came the tapping. Soft, deliberate, against the glass beside me. I turned, expecting to see raindrops, but it wasn't raining. The tapping was from inside. When I looked closer, I saw fingerprints. Small, child-sized prints smeared against the window, fogging the glass from within. My heart thudded so hard it hurt. I whispered a prayer my grandmother used to say, something about returning lost souls to their realm, but the tapping only got faster. Louder. Until the sound came from every side, like dozens of unseen hands were clawing to get in. I shot up from my seat and stumbled toward the front of the bus, but the driver's seat was empty. The wheel spun gently on its own, the bus still gliding straight down the dark highway. I shouted, searching for him, for anyone, but the rows were empty. Every seat. I was alone. Or maybe, not alone. Then the lights flickered. Once. Twice. The third time, everything went dark. And in that darkness, I heard whispering. Not words I could understand, but soft, wet breaths close to my ear, overlapping, dozens of them. I tried to move, but my body felt pinned, heavy. The whispers turned into sobs, then into laughter, high-pitched, echoing, childlike. Something brushed against my leg, cold and damp. I looked down, and through the dim light of my phone screen, I saw small handprints on the floor, leading from the aisle toward me. The bus jolted suddenly, throwing me forward. Lights snapped back on, and the driver was there again, hands gripping the wheel, muttering prayers in Malay. He looked terrified. I asked what happened, voice shaking. He didn't answer at first, just handed me a packet of hell money and told me to burn it when we stopped. Said something had followed the bus since we left the terminal. Said it always found someone traveling alone. When we finally reached Ipoh, dawn was breaking. I stepped off the bus, my legs weak, my body drenched in sweat. The other passengers disembarked too, silent, dazed. But when I turned to count them, I froze. There were 7 of us now. I swear there were only 6 when we left. The 7th was a woman in a faded cheongsam, her hair long and dripping as if she had walked through rain. She smiled faintly at me, eyes hollow. Then she turned and disappeared into the crowd. I stayed with May for a few days, trying to shake off what happened. She listened quietly, then asked if I'd been traveling during the Hungry Ghost month. I nodded. Her face paled. She said that during this month, the lonely spirits wander, looking for companions. Some follow the living, hoping to be remembered. Others just want company. She made me promise to visit the temple before returning home, to make offerings and apologize. I did. Burned incense, left food, bowed 3 times. But that night, I woke up cold again. The sound of tapping came from the window beside my bed, slow, steady, familiar. When I looked, the same small handprints were there. Only this time, they were on the inside. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My voice just vanished into my throat like it knew making a sound would make things worse. I backed away from the window, my body trembling so hard the bed frame rattled beneath me. The room felt wrong, like the air itself had a weight to it, pressing down on my chest. The smell of wet earth seeped in through the cracks of the window even though we were on the 3rd floor. It was the smell of graves, of something old and unsettled. The handprints began to slide slowly downward, smearing across the glass as though whoever made them was dragging their hands toward the sill. I grabbed the red string May had hung above the door, a simple charm, she'd said, to keep bad spirits away, and wrapped it tight around my wrist. It burned hot for a moment, like a pulse of fire, and then the room went still. The handprints faded as if they'd never been there. I sat there in the dark, clutching the string and whispering every protective phrase my grandmother had ever taught me. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. At dawn, May knocked on my door. I opened it slowly, still shaking, and she didn't even ask what happened, she just took one look at my face and told me to get dressed. She said we were going to see someone she trusted, an old man who helped people when things like this followed them home. He wasn't a priest or a monk, just someone who knew how to deal with the kind of things most people pretended didn't exist. She said if I didn't do this properly, they would keep following me, growing stronger every night. The place we went to was at the edge of town, hidden behind a row of banyan trees. It wasn't a shrine, not exactly, more like an abandoned house that had been reclaimed by silence. The air there was thick with the smell of smoke and old wood. Inside, candles flickered in cracked glass jars, and the floor was covered with strange white markings drawn in powder. The old man stood waiting, a thin figure with eyes that never quite met mine. He asked softly if I had traveled alone recently. When I said yes, his expression tightened. He handed me a small folded paper covered in black ink symbols and told me to hold it until he said otherwise. His voice was low, steady, and calm in a way that made the air feel heavier. I followed his instructions exactly. He lit several candles and a bowl filled with dried herbs that released thick, bitter smoke. He told me to whisper my name and ask whatever was following me to let go. The smoke swirled in patterns that didn't move with the wind, it almost looked like it was alive. For a moment, the place felt calmer, like something had finally exhaled. But then I saw her again. The woman in the faded cheongsam stood in the far corner, her head slightly bowed, her hair still dripping as if she'd walked out of water. No one else seemed to notice her. Her hands reached out toward me, not threatening, but pleading. Her mouth opened as if to speak, but no sound came out, just a rush of cold air that made one of the candles flicker violently. The old man's voice grew louder now, the rhythm of his words quick and desperate, like he was trying to drown out something else. The paper in my palm grew hot, almost burning my skin. He shouted for me not to look at her, not to acknowledge her. But something in her expression, those empty eyes, the way her lips trembled, made me feel like she wasn't just a ghost. Like she was asking for something. I turned to May, desperate, but she was on her knees, clutching her hands to her chest, whispering for it to stop. The old man's voice rose to a roar. The floor beneath my feet began to shake, the sound of shifting wood echoing like something beneath the ground was moving, rising. I clutched the paper harder, feeling it crackle and tear in my sweaty grip. That's when she moved closer. 1 step. 2. Her fingers almost touching mine. And in that moment, I smelled it again, the same wet earth, but stronger now, mixed with the faint, sour scent of decay. The candles went out all at once. Total darkness swallowed us. And then, the screaming started. Not mine, not May's, but dozens of voices echoing from nowhere, overlapping like a storm of the dead. Hands brushed against my arms, my back, my neck. Cold. So cold it burned. I dropped the paper without meaning to, and everything fell silent. When the lights came back, the woman was gone. The old man stood slumped against the wall, sweat pouring down his face, lips moving in a faint, broken whisper. May was shaking quietly, eyes wide, as if she'd seen something worse than death. And I was standing alone in front of the circle, ashes scattered across the floor like black snow. The old man finally spoke. He said the ritual had been interrupted when I dropped the paper. He said she was not at peace, and now, neither was I. He told me to leave the place immediately, not to look back, not to speak to anyone on the way home, and never to travel alone at night again. His eyes were dark and heavy, as if he was looking past me, to something standing right behind me. I followed his instructions. May drove me back to her apartment, the car silent except for the sound of her shaky breathing. I tried not to look at the rearview mirror. I tried not to see if someone was sitting in the back seat. But sometimes, when the streetlights flickered as we passed, I thought I saw a pale face just behind my shoulder. Back at the apartment, May insisted I sleep in her room. She burned more herbs, sprinkled salt at the doorways, even hung fresh red strings above the windows. We sat up until dawn, both of us too afraid to close our eyes. But when I finally drifted into sleep, I dreamed of water. Dark, still water. And of her standing in it, waist deep, holding out her hand. I woke up gasping, my sheets damp with cold sweat. The window was fogged over again, covered in small, smudged handprints. This time, they weren't sliding down. They were reaching up, as if something below was trying to climb inside. I stumbled out of bed, my heart hammering against my ribs. May was still asleep beside me, her breathing steady, unaware of the cold seeping into the room. The air smelled faintly of the river, that same thick, muddy scent of stagnant water. I pulled back the curtain, and there she was. She was standing outside, on the street below. Her soaked cheongsam clung to her body, and her head tilted upward toward me, though her eyes were hidden by strands of dripping black hair. She didn't move. Didn't blink. Just stared. The dawn light made her skin look pale blue, almost translucent. My breath caught in my throat. For a second, I thought I could hear her whispering my name through the glass, drawn out and broken, like the sound was coming from underwater. I wanted to scream for May, but I knew waking her would change nothing. Spirits like that didn't obey the rules of the living. I closed my eyes and started chanting softly, repeating the temple prayer I'd learned. When I opened them again, she was gone. But the handprints remained, fresh ones this time, smaller, as though a child had pressed its palms against the inside of the glass. That morning, May drove me to the bus station. She didn't argue when I said I needed to go home. She just handed me a small pouch of rice and salt and told me to keep it in my pocket. Her grandmother had sworn it could ward off hungry ghosts. I wanted to believe that. But deep down, I knew this wasn't something I could escape by distance. Still, I boarded the bus, praying the morning light would keep whatever followed me away. The bus was full this time. Families, couples, chatter. It should have felt safe, but it didn't. The seat beside me remained empty until the very last moment, when an old woman climbed aboard, carrying a woven basket of joss paper and oranges. She sat down next to me without a word. I nodded politely, trying to seem calm. Halfway through the trip, the driver suddenly slowed down. Through the window, I saw why, a road accident ahead. A truck had overturned, blocking part of the highway. The wreck was surrounded by smoke and flashing lights, but no emergency crews. No people. Just an eerie stillness. The driver muttered that he'd take a detour through an older road, one that curved through the forest. I looked out at the stretch of trees ahead, dense, dark, endless. As we turned off the main road, the old woman beside me started humming softly. A melody I didn't recognize, haunting and low. It sounded like a lullaby. She turned to me, her eyes half closed, and said something I'll never forget. She said, "Some souls don't want to hurt you. They just want you to see them." I froze. Before I could ask what she meant, she pressed an orange into my hand. When I looked down, the skin was cold and wet, like it had just been taken out of water. When I looked up again, the seat beside me was empty. The orange rolled off my lap and hit the floor with a dull thud. It split open slightly, and inside, the pulp was dark, rotten. The bus lights flickered once, then twice. I reached for my pouch of rice and salt, but it was gone. The smell of river water returned, filling the air, thick and suffocating. And then I heard it again. That slow, steady tapping on the window. Every head in the bus turned toward the sound at once. Everyone's. Rows of faces frozen in fear as something began moving down the aisle, wet footprints appearing one by one on the floor. I couldn't see who or what was leaving them. The air grew so cold I could see everyone's breath fogging in unison. The driver shouted something about holding on, but his voice broke off with a choking sound. The bus jerked violently. I grabbed the seat in front of me just in time as we swerved to a stop. For a long moment, there was silence. Then the door creaked open by itself. A gust of wind blew through, carrying with it the faint sound of splashing water. I looked outside. There was no road anymore. No forest. Just a wide, black river stretching out beneath us, glimmering faintly under the moonlight. Impossible, but there it was. Someone started crying softly in the back. I turned, and saw her standing there again. The woman in the cheongsam. Her hair hung down her front now, dripping onto the floor. Her eyes were hollow, but fixed on me. She didn't walk. She drifted. And behind her, more figures began to appear, men, women, children, all with that same pale, drowned look, their bodies swaying gently as if still underwater. The old woman's voice echoed faintly in my mind. Some souls just want you to see them. So I did the only thing I could. I stood up. My legs were shaking, but I faced her. I told her softly that I saw her, that I understood. That she didn't have to follow me anymore. For a moment, she stopped moving. The others did too. Then, slowly, she smiled. A small, broken smile that twisted into something almost peaceful. She turned toward the door and stepped off the bus, straight into the black river below. The others followed. One by one, their forms dissolved into mist. When the last one vanished, the world around me shifted. The river faded. The forest returned. The bus was back on the road. The driver sat at the wheel, dazed, muttering prayers. The passengers were pale, trembling, but alive. I looked down, the orange was gone. In my lap was the small paper talisman from the temple, completely dry. When I got home, I burned incense, made offerings, and prayed until sunrise. I thought that was the end of it. But sometimes, when I travel, I still feel it, the chill of her presence beside me. And every year, during the 7th lunar month, I wake up to the faint sound of tapping on my window. Not from outside. From within the glass. If you ever travel during Hungry Ghost Month, never go alone. And if you hear someone tapping to be let in, whatever you do, don't look. Because once you see them, they see you forever.